There's this feeling everywhere today, isn't there? It's heavy, often anxious.
Mm-hmm. You definitely feel it.
Feel it in the air, right?
Oh,
All
wow.
these constant apocalyptic scenarios, pandemics, wars, climate stuff.
Yeah, it makes that doomsday clock feel, well, closer than ever.
Absolutely. And this whole climate of multi-crisis, this constant problem-solving mode, just reacting all the time.
It really does reduce life down to just survival, doesn't it? It sort of drains the future, leaves this bleak feeling.
And it's not just the news either. The source material points out how apocalypses sell, in culture.
Novels, movies.
Right, like Don DeLillo, T.C. Boyle, all that climate fiction. There's a real market for, well, imagining the end.
It's true. That story of the end it's pervasive. And this is exactly the world that Byung-Chul Han tackles in his book, The Spirit of Hope.
Okay, great. So let's unpack this. Our mission today is to do a deep dive into the very start of Han's argument. We're focusing on the Preludio, the first chapter, and also these two really striking mottos he puts right at the beginning. We want to get a handle on what Han actually means by hope here and why he thinks it's so crucial, not just for, getting through this fear, but for genuinely living and maybe opening up a different kind of future.
Right. So Han kicks things off by describing this pervasive climate of fear. He basically says it kills the seeds of hope, creates this depressive atmosphere.
And he links this fear, this sort of anxiety and resentment, he links it directly to the rise of right-wing populism.
He does. He argues it fuels hatred, erodes solidarity, basic courtesy, empathy, all the things that kind of hold society together.
Yeah, it makes you think of that Obama quote the source mentions about democracy buckling when we give in to fear.
Exactly. It suggests fear and democratic foundations are, well, fundamentally opposed.
So fear is a tool.
Historically, absolutely.
Yeah.
A primary tool of control. It makes people docile, easier to manipulate, easier to extort.
Because when you're anxious,
You're afraid to speak up, right? You fear the backlash. Han points to things like, digital pylons, hate speech. Fear makes us hesitate even to think our own thoughts.
it's courage to think, to speak. Fear shuts that down first.
And it closes us off to anything different, anything other. Fear pushes conformity, what Han calls a logic of the same. It's all about efficiency, productivity, fitting in. Anything outside that feels like a threat.
Which brings us to that core contrast he draws. Fear versus freedom and action. He's pretty blunt about it. Fear and freedom just don't mix.
No. He says fear turns society into a kind of prison, just putting up warning signs everywhere. Danger, danger, danger.
Whereas hope is different.
Completely. Hope leaves indicators, pathfinders, and encourages you to set out on a journey, gives you a sense of direction, orientation.
Ah, okay.
Actions born out of fear, Han argues, they're not really open to the future. They lack that horizon of meaning, that sense of possibility beyond just reacting. Fear, he says. Fear is mute. Hope narrates.
Hope narrates. I like that. It tells a story, gives things meaning, while fear just sort of stops the story.
Precisely. And it's interesting the point he makes about the pandemic era. He's not denying the reasons for fear, climate change, viruses. Those are real threats.
Sure.
But he's worried about the spread of the climate of fear itself. He calls it the pandemic of fear, which is something different from just being afraid of the pandemic. It's the pervasive atmosphere that's the real issue for him.
Okay, so if fear closes everything down, what exactly is this thing Han calls hope? He gets into the word itself, right? The etymology.
He does. The word hope, Hoffen in German, its roots mean things like stretching forward, looking into the distance, looking towards the future.
It's about opening up your vision.
Literally opening your eyes to what's coming. Compare that to anxiety or anguish, angst, which etymologically means narrowness.
Ah, right. Anxiety constricts, makes you feel trapped.
Exactly. Hope is expansive. Han even uses this old hunting analogy. Forfen meant pausing to listen, to try and catch the scent on the wind, figure out where to go next. Hope is about orienting yourself toward an open future.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me, and maybe a bit counterintuitive. Han says the deepest hope comes from the deepest despair. How does that work?
Well, it's a dialectical idea.
Yeah.
Like opposites interacting to create something new. He uses the Greek myth of Elpis, Hope. She's the daughter of Nyx Knight.
Oh, okay.
So Hope siblings are Darksis, strife. Negativity isn't something Hope tries to avoid. It's baked into its very essence.
It reminds me of St. Paul writing about suffering producing perseverance and perseverance leading to hope.
Exactly. Or Nietzsche has this incredible image hope as a rainbow over a raging waterfall. It gets swallowed by the spray, but keeps reforming, breaking through with this tender and beautiful audacity right where things are most chaotic.
Tender and beautiful audacity. It's definitely not passive waiting then, is it?
Not at all. It's strong, but also receptive, kind of listening. And this is really crucial for Han because he sharply distinguishes this kind of hope from just, optimism or positive thinking.
How so? What's the difference?
Optimism, for Han, is kind of superficial. It lacks that wrestling with negativity. It's all positive, doesn't know doubt or despair. It lives in a closed time frame, expects a predictable future, and, importantly, doesn't really risk anything.
And positive psychology, he's critical there too.
Yeah, he sees it as often avoiding suffering, blaming the individual if they feel bad, isolating people.
Making everyone focus just on their own positive vibes.
Right, and destroying empathy in the process. Han's hope is different. It confronts negativity, and it connects people. The source stresses that the subject of hope is a we, not just an I.
Okay, so it builds community, and it's a movement, a searching.
A movement of searching, exactly, towards the unknown, towards what he calls the not yet.
The not yet. That sounds key to how it relates to time. The source quotes Romans, right? Hope that is seen is no hope at all.
Precisely. Hope exists only in relation to something not yet present, not yet achieved. It's a spiritual stance that lifts us above just the immediate facts.
And he uses Derrida's distinction between future and advent.
Yes. The future is predictable, the stuff we plan for, schedule, manage. The advent, though, is the unpredictable, the unexpected event that can just break in, something beyond our calculations. Han's hope is open to that. It welcomes the surprise.
It's like giving reality the benefit of the doubt, believing something new is possible, while fear just assumes the worst.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Fear removes credit, hope gives credit. And this ties back to hope having intensity.
Intensity, like passion.
Exactly. Like intense joy or love, Han argues. It needs that negative pole, that contrast to be truly felt, truly powerful. He contrasts it with the modern like, that sort of easy consumer preference. It lacks intensity. Hope is an intensity, a passion born from the negativity of despair. It keeps going, even in the dark.
Okay, that gives us a really solid grasp of Han's idea of hope. So with that framework, let's look at those two mottos that open the book. They seem to capture different sides of this. The first is from Gabriel Marcel, La esperanza es un afán y un salto, which translates as...
Hope is an effort and a leap.
Right. An effort and a leap. That sounds very active.
It absolutely is. It directly challenges that older view, maybe like Camus had, of hope as just passive waiting or resignation. Marcel, and Han agrees, sees hope as fundamentally active.
So it's not just wishing, it's doing. The source calls it a militant passion, a force of leaping, an impetus.
Exactly. And unlike simple desire or expectation, which are usually about specific things we want, hope has this narrative quality. It fires up the imagination. It dreams actively. It has duration, breadth. It changes how you see the world. Han calls it a fundamental mood, not just a fleeting emotion.
And the leap part, that implies risk, doesn't it? It takes courage, that audacity we heard from Nietzsche.
It does, risking the jump towards a new life, inspired by something new. That Latin phrase, incipit vita nova, a new life begins.
It's a move beyond just fear and calculation.
Definitely. And Nietzsche also talked about hope as a kind of pregnancy, this readiness for something new to be born, preparing for something potentially bigger than ourselves. That's the effort, the buildup, the anticipation before the leap of birth.
And you said hope is a we thing, so the leap isn't just personal.
No, it inspires collective action too. Think about Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream. That wasn't just a passive wish, it was a wakeful vision, Han would say, that sparked a huge movement. Hope holds that potential for collective change, for moving towards something better together.
Wow. Okay, so that's the effort and the leap. What about the second motto from the poet Paul Celan? Mientras aún le quede luz a la estrella, nada estará perdido. Nada.
Which means, while the star still has light, nothing will be lost. Nothing.
That feels different. More about endurance, persistence.
Very much so. It speaks to hope's ability to persist, that little glimmer, even in the absolute darkest moments, right in the middle of disaster. The source mentions hope star bordering the star of disaster.
So hope exists even alongside catastrophe.
Yes, it suggests hope is found in fragility, born right out of despair, even when maybe words fail, when the usual stories break down. That light of the star is that tiny, enduring spark of possibility against all odds.
The source connects this persistence, this porphia, he calls it, to language itself, to poetry like Celan's or Ingeborg Bachmann's.
Right. Even if reaching some utopian future seems impossible, the poem, the language itself, keeps the belief alive. Language becomes a refuge for hope when everything else feels mute.
It reminds me of Kafka, that idea of despairing hope, finding peace in dangerous waters, or dreaming of the message that never arrives.
Exactly. The light of the star is like that sustained dreaming, that faithful presence, that belief that sense might exist even when it seems absent.
And those final words, nada, nothing, nothing. So final, so absolute.
Incredibly powerful. It means as long as there's any glimmer, any light, total loss isn't possible.
It suggests hope is absolute in a way.
Yes, it transcends the ups and downs of the world, opens up that possibility of redemption or that unexpected advent we talked about. It's very different from, say, Heidegger's focus on the past, on being as having been.
How so?
Celan's star, that light. It represents a kind of pre-consciousness of what's coming, the potential for what hasn't been born yet. It's a vision from the future, not just looking back.
Okay. So putting it all together, Han gives us this really complex, quite demanding picture of hope right from the start. It's definitely not easy optimism.
Not at all. It's born from facing negativity. It's active. It requires effort, courage. It builds community, and it somehow persists even when things look utterly bleak.
It goes beyond just willpower or calculating odds.
Exactly. It makes space for the unpredictable, for possibilities that seem unlikely. It's almost, you could say, receptive to grace, to something beyond our immediate control.
And bringing this back to where we started this world feeling overwhelmed by fear, Han's argument isn't about just putting on a brave face, is it?
No, it's a call for this deeper, maybe harder kind of hope. The kind that doesn't ignore the bad stuff, but confronts it, that pushes us to act, to connect, and keeps alive the possibility that something genuinely new and better could emerge. It helps us move beyond just surviving.
It makes us rethink the future itself, not just as what's likely, but what's possible, even if unforeseen.
Yes, exactly. That openness to the advent.
So recapping this Preludio and the mottos, Han's telling us hope isn't passive wishing or simply being optimistic. It's this active dialectical force born from despair, crucial for breaking out of the survival mode fear traps us in, and for, well, opening up the future.
It's an effort, a leap, and that persistent light in the dark.
And crucially, it's a we thing. It links us together facing towards that not yet.
That shared direction, that collective potential, that enduring light. Pretty vital ideas for a world grappling with so much isolation and fear.
Which really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? If Han is right, if true hope needs us to confront negativity, maybe even despair, does our modern focus on relentless positivity, on avoiding discomfort at all costs, actually weaken our ability to find that deeper, more transformative hope?
That's a challenging question.
And what would cultivating this kind of difficult dialectical politics of hope actually look like day to day in a world that seems run by fear and that logic of the same?
Yeah.
Definitely something to ponder as we navigate what's ahead.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are plunging into the second chapter of Byung-Chul Han's latest work, The Spirit of Hope.
Yeah, and we've got quite a bit of your source material here, specifically zeroing in on that chapter called Hope in Action.
That's right. And our goal here is to really unpack Han's, well, deep philosophical exploration of this pretty complex relationship between hope and action. We're going to try and dissect his arguments, look at how he positions hope against other ideas, and sort of trace his conversation with some major figures in philosophy.
Absolutely. And this should be particularly interesting for those of you, knee-deep in philosophical studies already. Han's takes on Camus, Nietzsche, Arendt, Heidegger. It's fascinating stuff in this chapter.
Okay, so let's get stuck into this chapter and see what key insights we can pull out together. Han really doesn't waste any time, does he? He jumps straight into tackling this long-standing view of hope. What's that traditional critique he addresses right off the bat?
Right. He's basically pushing back against this idea that hope is fundamentally passive or even, works against taking action.
The idea that it lacks resolution, that it makes you look away from reality.
Exactly. That it's about indulging in illusions, distracting you from life as it is.
And he uses Albert Camus as a prime example of this thinking. Han points out Camus connects hope with mortal evasion.
Yeah, Camus really saw it as a distraction from life itself. He even goes so far as calling it the most terrible of all evils from Pandora's box.
Though Han points out, and it's a neat detail, that Camus gets the myth slightly wrong, hope actually stayed in the box, didn't it?
Right, exactly. A small but telling point from Han.
But Camus's main point still stands. For him, hope equals resignation. And, well, to live is not to resign oneself.
Which then brings up this really crucial question that Han poses, and it's like central to his whole argument here. What is this life itself that hope supposedly betrays?
Is a life without any horizon of ideas, without any sense of sense, is that even something we want? Or is it even possible?
Han's argument is basically that without those ideas giving meaning things like freedom or empathy, life just collapses into, well, mere survival.
Or into what he sees dominating today, just the imminence of consumption.
Right. And in that consumerist world, you don't really have hope, do you? You just have desires, needs. The word hope doesn't really fit in the capitalist way of thinking because someone with real hope isn't just passively consuming.
He also touches on Spinoza briefly, who saw hope as kind of irrational, something we need less of as reason guides us more.
Yeah, reason and hope set against each other.
But Han quickly counters that, suggesting Spinoza might miss how hope can open up possibilities for action that reason, in a narrow sense, just can't perceive, like hearing a harmonic that reason is deaf to.
So yeah, that's the view. Han wants to take apart hope as passive, maybe even harmful.
But then he immediately flips it, bringing in a very different viewpoint, especially from Nietzsche.
Yes, Nietzsche is a really powerful counterpoint here. His take on Pandora's box is quite different. He thought Zeus deliberately left hope inside so that humans, suffering from all the evils let loose, wouldn't just give up living. Hope lets us keep going, even through torment. It enables perseverance.
That's quite a twist on the myth. And then there's that incredible metaphor. Han quotes hope as a rainbow over a waterfall. Can you remind us of that?
Oh, it's stunning. Hope is a rainbow unfolding over the spring of life that plunges in a dizzying cascade, a rainbow 100 times swallowed by the spray and as many times remade, and which with tender and beautiful audacity appears over the torrent, there where its roar is wildest and most dangerous.
Wow. Tender and beautiful audacity. That phrase really resonates. What does Han take from that image?
Well, it captures hope's complexity, doesn't it? There's the audacity, acting boldly, facing the harshness, the wildest roar.
Right.
But it's also tender and beautiful, so it's not just brute force. There's something contemplative in it, something reaching forward, maybe even a kind of listening or openness.
Okay, so Han's shown us what hope isn't. It's not just passive resignation like Camus thought, and maybe it's more complex than just sheer grit, like a simple reading of Nietzsche might suggest. Now, he really starts to sharpen his own definition, especially by contrasting hope with things it often gets confused with, like optimism.
Yes, this distinction is absolutely crucial for Han's argument. Optimism, the way he defines it, is marked by a complete lack of negativity.
Right, it knows no doubt, no despair, just pure positivity.
He describes the optimist as living in a kind of closed time. The future feels, available, predictable. They don't really expect surprises or anything truly unpredictable.
And optimism, in this view, isn't something you achieve or fight for. It's just there, like a personality trait.
Exactly. And because it lacks that tension, that doubt, the optimist doesn't act resolutely. They don't take risks because they don't really see any real danger or deep uncertainty.
But hope, on the other hand, is fundamentally different. It includes negativity, doesn't it? Doubt, maybe even despair are part of it.
Precisely. He calls it a movement of search, actively looking for direction. It launches itself into the unknown, the open, towards what is not yet.
So it needs to be what elicited, brought forth. It's active, it has enthusiasm.
And crucially, it assumes risk in its action. Han also notes, interestingly, that the pessimist is kind of stuck in the same closed time as the optimist, blind to possibility, lacking imagination for the new. Neither really gambles on what could free us from how things are.
He makes a very similar and quite strong distinction with positive thinking and positive psychology.
Oh, definitely. This is a major target for him. He argues positive psychology sort of detaches us from suffering, focusing only on our own subjective well-being.
It tells you to just change your negative thoughts, right? Like the world's a supermarket where positive vibes get you what you want.
Yeah, and the danger Han sees is how this privatizes suffering. It makes individuals blame themselves for their problems, rather than looking at the societal structures that might be causing that suffering.
It actively suppresses awareness of social suffering.
And this focus on positivity, he argues, leads to isolation. People become selfishly focused on themselves, and empathy gets suppressed because you're discouraged from dwelling on negativity, including the suffering of others. In today's world, he sees it creating a really unsympathetic society.
Whereas hope, in Han's view, doesn't turn away from the negative. It holds it within itself. And it doesn't isolate. It links people, reconciles them. He insists the subject of hope is always fundamentally a we.
Which leads nicely into the whole temporality of hope. It's not aimed at the predictable future. Han talks about the not yet to Davia no.
Exactly. It's all about what's coming, what hasn't arrived yet. He calls it a spiritual attitude, something that lifts us above our current reality.
Gabriel Marcel puts it beautifully, doesn't he? Saying hope is woven into an ongoing experience, like an adventure that is not yet finished.
And Marcel also says that to hope means something like to grant credit to reality, having faith in it, letting it become pregnant with future.
Yeah, while fear does the opposite, it withdraws that credit, closes off the future.
Han then brings in Derrida's distinction to sharpen this point even more. The difference between futuro and advenimiento.
Right. The futuro is, well, it's the predictable future. The stuff we plan for, calculate, manage. Tomorrow, next year, the expected.
But the advenimiento, that's different. That's what arrives often unexpectedly.
It bursts in, it's incalculable, unpredictable, it opens up possibilities that just weren't available before. It announces the coming of something truly distinct, something genuinely new.
So, for Han, hope is aimed squarely at this advenimiento, this arrival of the truly new and unavailable.
While optimism, planning, just simple expectation, they're all stuck dealing with the predictable futuro.
And this is really key, isn't it, for pushing back against that idea of hope being passive. Han insists it's way more than just weak desire or waiting around.
Absolutely emphatic about that. Hope is marked by enthusiasm, by drive. He uses the word a fan. He calls it a militant passion that raises its banner.
It has this inherent drive for action, a force of leap, forza de salto.
He really wants to draw a line between a passive, weak kind of hope where you just wait for good things to happen to you, and a dynamic, active, strong hope that actually inspires you to act effectively, creatively.
Which makes it very different from just desire or expectation. Desire is usually for specific things, right? It's punctual, based on a feeling of lack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But hope is narrative. It unfolds a story, it has duration, scope, it sparks the narrative imagination. And while desire stems from lack, Han argues strong hope possesses its own fullness, its own light, its own force. It lacks nothing, in a sense. It's an impetus.
He also takes issue with thinkers like Terry Eagleton, who might see hope as just, say, a linguistic habit or something you acquire like a virtue.
Yeah. Han thinks hope as a mood, as a fundamental feeling, actually comes before language. It shapes language itself. You can't just decide to acquire deep hope through willpower or practice. It has this transcendent quality. It goes beyond the everyday.
Moods like hope, or anxiety for that matter, they sort of seize us, don't they? We fall into them. They're not fully under our control, but they can really transform us.
And this links into Wittgenstein's fascinating question. Can an animal hope? Wittgenstein suggests only beings with language can, and Han tends to agree.
Why? Because hope lives in the future and needs a narrative structure.
Pretty much. It requires this developed sense of time, an idea of tomorrow that Han argues animal communication, focused on immediate signals, doesn't really have.
He quotes Eric Fromm defining active hope. That was that.
Yeah, Fromm says, "It is neither passive waiting nor unrealistic forcing of circumstances. It is like a crouching tiger that will only leap when the time has come. Having hope means being prepared at any moment for something that is not yet born."
Being prepared.
Yeah.
Like Nietzsche's rainbow image again.
Yeah,
But maybe interpreted differently here. Han sees it as a state of pregnancy.
exactly. To have hope is to be ready for the birth of the new.
Doing things with faith that they'll help what's developing, sensing something valuable unfolding.
Yeah, and feeling this pure, almost cathartic sense of deep irresponsibility, as if something greater than ourselves is emerging.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech seems like a perfect illustration of this active visionary aspect. He was a daydreamer, Han says.
Right. Han argues hope creates these kinds of visions. It fuels the imagination needed for action. These aren't just escapist fantasies. They're creative, future-shaping visions with a real grounding. They show the way forward and involve a strong resolve to act. They are dreams in which we actively work to change reality.
And speaking of dreams, Han digs into that difference between daydreams, sueños diurnos, and night dreams, sueños nocturnos.
Yeah, daydreams, or waking dreams as they're sometimes called, are fundamentally forward-looking for Han. Attentive to the future, to what's not yet born, what's on its way.
And the self, the yo, in daydreams is expansive. It can include others.
Right. He says the ego of the deluded can encompass others in this context. They have this huge utopian and political potential that can be revolutionary, and importantly, they're often shared, they happen in community with other egos.
Whereas night dreams, drawing more on Freud, are backward-looking. The past comes up in them.
Exactly. The yo is introverted, isolated. Han quotes the idea that the sleeper is alone with his treasures.
They lack that utopian drive. They're more about processing the past, right? Often appearing as these golden dreams of wish fulfillment or as nightmares. For Han, they don't really open onto the future.
This whole rich picture of active, future-facing hope then leads Han into a fascinating engagement with Hannah Arendt's theory of action.
Right. Arendt, of course, saw faith and hope as vital for human existence, even though she noted they weren't big themes in ancient Greek thought.
For Arendt, the key is natality, the simple fact that new beings are always being born, entering the world. This is the bedrock condition for action, which she famously called a miracle that interrupts automatic processes.
And she had mechanisms for dealing with the problems action creates, didn't she? Forgiveness for the irreversible past, promise for the unpredictable future.
Exactly. Promise helps create islands of predictability, helping us, in a sense, control the future.
But this is where Han takes issue, quite sharply. He argues Arendt doesn't see hope as necessary for action itself. She seems to think we can hope because we can act.
And Han just flips that entirely. He insists hope comes before action and is its real driving force, its engine. It's hope, Han argues, not action alone that works the miracles that makes new beginnings possible.
He suggests maybe Arendt's focus on vita activa, on pure initiative, misses something crucial about hope, its contemplative side, that blend of activity and receptivity.
Yeah, Han's core critique here is, you just can't make a truly new beginning without hope. The spirit of hope inspires both the action and the passion for the genuinely new. Without it, activity risks becoming just doing things. Problem solving, maybe, but not real creation.
He links hope to this deep yearning for redemption, like the feeling of good news when a child is born. And that feeling, that hope, comes before the action.
He also questions Arndt's focus on forgiveness. Forgiveness deals with intentional acts, sure, but what about the unintended consequences? The stuff beyond our control that reveals our finitude, our ontological guilt.
Han thinks it's hope, not forgiveness, that truly clears the path for new beginnings. It lets us move beyond those negative, unforeseen outcomes and stay open to the future, to the possible.
And while Arndt saw promise as a way to manage or close off the future, Han counters that both hope and trust actually require an open horizon. If the future was totally controllable, why would we need hope?
Right.
Trust lets us act despite uncertainty. It's different from contracts, which are based on imperatives and fundamentally a lack of trust. He brings in Moltmann's idea of Christian hope here, too, aiming for a novum ultimum, a final new creation, which inspires this active break with the past.
We've touched on negativity quite a bit, and Han brings it back strongly to explore this central paradox. The idea that the deepest hope often comes from the deepest despair. Hope as a dialectic figure.
Absolutely. Negativity isn't just something hope overcomes, it's part of hope's very fabric. He points to the myth where Elpis, Hope is the daughter of Nyx, night, and sister of Eris, discord. Hope and strife are related.
St. Paul in Romans captures this too, doesn't he? Saying suffering leads to perseverance, perseverance to character, and character to hope. The negativity is the soil it grows in.
And Nietzsche's rainbow over the wildest and most dangerous torrent. That's the perfect image again. Hope showing up precisely within the despair.
Han sees this powerfully in Kafka's parables, like the character Hopeless rounding the Cape of Good Hope, sailing peacefully in dangerous waters.
It's a hope born from total despair, isn't it? Almost an existential state, not even aimed at getting somewhere specific. The character, Desesperanzado, never actually arrives.
And Kafka's imperial message, the message from the dying emperor that will never get through all the obstacles.
Right, but the person waiting at the window dreams of it when night falls. The message, the hope itself, isn't arriving from outside. It's being created, dreamt by hope.
This is what Han labels desperate hope, or the hope of the hopeless. It's the force that keeps things going, like building the Great Wall, even knowing the goal might be unreachable.
The crucial insight here seems to be that despair's negativity doesn't crush hope. It actually grounds it, strengthens it. Absolute hope makes action possible even when things seem utterly bleak. It's like a faith in meaning itself, surviving even when everything else falls apart.
Han connects this persistence porphia against disaster to Paul Celan's poetry, how language endured through terror and came out enriched.
And Ingeborg Bachmann's work, too. Her belief in the day that will come, even while knowing it probably won't, because without that belief, writing, living just isn't possible.
Bachmann sees hope as the conditio humana, the very condition of being human, guiding our actions. It has this paradoxical, almost operatic quality, like her Coasts of Bohemia, a place that doesn't exist on any map, yet you must hope to reach it just to live.
Yeah, she describes it so well. Hope lets you settle in a home, promises a homeland, bridges the gap, it gives you orientation. And paradoxically, you find solid ground only when you hit rock bottom, like finding trust deep in the sea. Having sunk to the bottom, I wake up calmly. Now that I know from the bottom, I will faithfully trust.
This whole picture of hope stands in really stark contrast to anxiety, doesn't it? Han argues anxiety isolates us.
Totally. And he sees this intensified in our neoliberal society, promoting self-enterprise, competition, narcissistic isolation. Fear, which fuels anxiety, builds no community, no we.
But hope does the opposite. It connects, reconciles, links people, fosters community. Gabriel Marcel's quote is lovely here. Thinking of us, I have put my hopes in you. Perhaps this is the most adequate and perfect way to express that act.
Marcel also links hope directly to love. Hope is magnetized by love, bringing people together. Love and anxiety can't really coexist. Hope makes space for love.
While anxiety, being incompatible with trust and community, just leads to alienation, loneliness, disorientation, distrust.
And crucially, hope is shareable in a way anxiety isn't. It inherently implies a we. It spreads, transmits the flame. Han calls it the ferment of revolution, the spark for the new incipit vita nova, a new life begins.
Fear just leads to submission, doesn't it? The potential for real change, for a different world, only lies in hope. If fear takes over completely, life shrinks down to mere survival.
He throws in a mention of Václav Havel, too, who spoke of feeling absolute hope even in deep despair, connecting it to distance, trust, and an openness to possibilities beyond what we can predict.
Han also briefly mentions another modern problem, the loss of distance, Lajania, in our information-saturated society.
Yeah, he thinks this constant availability, everything immediate, reduces language to just information. It kills poetry, leaves us sort of speechless.
But hope, he argues, actually needs distance. The word itself implies looking afar, mirar a lo lejos. Maybe counterintuitively, distance can deepen proximity, like Benjamin said about how things hold our gaze. Poetry certainly needs that space.
And Paul Celan's poetry, for Han, shows hope's negative transcendent side here. Suns shining over a blackish-gray moor, finding light within darkness. And the idea that where men don't reach, there are still songs to be sung. It suggests hope lives in a kind of beyond, a transcendence we can only really grasp through song or poetry. And just looking ahead a little, Han starts thinking about how hope connects to philosophical knowledge itself and to time.
He suggests hope actually generates knowledge, but a different kind of knowledge than, say, Plato, Hegel, or Heidegger focused on. There's retrospective, right? Based on essence, on what's already happened.
Exactly. Hope's knowledge is perspective. It's based on the future, on what's not yet born, on possibilities still to come. He coins this phrase, spes quariens intellectum hope-seeking understanding, playing on Augustine's Fides quariens intellectum, faith-seeking understanding.
So what's the shift? Is moving from understanding based on belief or looking back at essence?
To understanding based on anticipation, on presentiment, on the opening up of possibilities that hope itself brings about. It's knowledge that looks forward, dares to dream.
Which brings him back to Heidegger again. Heidegger's thinking is fundamentally oriented to what has been, the Cadizen. His idea of essence is rooted in the past.
Right. Han feels Heidegger misses the unborn, the things that have never existed yet. Heideggerian knowledge is about remembering, not really venturing forward or dreaming ahead.
And this connects to Walter Benjamin's messianic ideas. For Benjamin, the past isn't just done. It dreams forward into the future. Objects have hidden dream contents that reveal a secret language of hope, hinting at hidden connections. Dreaming itself, like Proust showed, can be a way of knowing.
Hope, in this sense, can kind of liberate things from history, save them by opening up new possibilities.
Adorno also saw hope as crucial for truth, didn't he? Truth isn't just out there. It has to be won against falsehood. It has a utopian core, needing to pull us from a false reality. Hope is how truth appears when we negate the way things are.
Yeah, and art, for Adorno, as descended from magic, holds on to this right to alterity, opening worlds beyond current logic, showing an appearance of omnipotence as hope, hinting at a different possible society.
Han also discusses Ernst Bloch's idea of the not yet conscious. How does that differ from Freud's unconscious?
Bloch's concept isn't about the repressed past like Freud's. It's the pre-consciousness of what is coming. It's where the new gestates, containing content just emerging from the future. It's the phenomenon of the novum, and hope is key to generating it.
But Han does critique Bloch too, right? He thinks Bloch focuses too much on hope as just emotion or militant will.
Yeah, Han feels Bloch downplays the contemplative side and hope's grounding in negativity. For Han, hope is more fundamentally a mood specifically, a festive mood. It actually lightens the existential load, makes you receptive to new possibilities, ones you didn't just willfully project. It's closer to receiving grace than just sheer willpower.
This kind of hope doesn't need forecasts. It trusts the unpredictable, possibilities against the odds.
And then one last contrast with Heidegger. Heidegger's core mood is anxiety, isolating, constricting, revealing existence as a burden, as being thrown. Hope is the opposite. Festive, communal, opening possibilities, oriented to the advent to new birth, not just our thrownness or death.
Yeah.
Heidegger remembers, hope envisions.
So wow, as you can hear, Byung-Chul Han really takes us on a deep, sometimes challenging philosophical journey here. He's dismantling assumptions about hope that are, well, pretty deeply ingrained, even in philosophy itself.
Yeah, he's definitely reframing it. Not as passive waiting, not as blind optimism, but as this active, dynamic, even paradoxical force. It's tied up with negativity, with imagination, and this very specific way of facing the future. Not the predictable future, but the unexpected arrival, the advenimiento of the truly new.
And he draws really sharp lines between hope and things like anxiety, optimism, positive thinking, seeing those as isolating and denying negativity. And he offers pretty pointed critiques of other major thinkers like Arendt and Heidegger, arguing they miss hope's absolutely fundamental enabling role in making new beginnings happen.
It ends up being this vision of hope that's paradoxically born from despair, that's deeply communal, and that's essential not just for getting through tough times, but for actually creating something genuinely new in the world.
So here's maybe something to think about as you continue your own philosophical work, especially considering this paradox at the heart of hope. If real hope emerges from negativity, if it means persisting against the odds and requires being open to the unexpected arrival, how might understanding that reshape our philosophical approach when we face situations that seem hopeless, whether that's an intellectual impasse in your studies or maybe broader societal challenges?
Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Okay, let's dive into a source today that, well, it really makes you rethink something fundamental. How we know anything at all. We're exploring the third chapter of Byung-Chul Han's book, The Spirit of Hope.
That's right. This chapter, Hope and Knowledge, is fascinating. Our mission, really, in this deep dive is to unpack Han's arguments about this intricate and often quite surprising link between hope and how we understand the world.
He jumps straight in, doesn't he? Challenges that very traditional view of knowledge. You know, the idea that it's all purely rational, detached.
Disembodied, even. Yeah. He argues for something much more integrated, something that brings in what we often try to filter out, our feelings, our physical experiences.
And crucially, our orientation towards the future.
Exactly. What's really interesting is how he grounds thinking in the physical. It's not just happening upstairs. It has this affective and bodily dimension.
He uses those powerful examples from Walter Benjamin, talks about images that make us think.
Right. Imágenes que nos hacen pensar. And even things like, well, goosebumps, carne de gallina. He points to these as actual bodily roots of thought.
So it's not just some abstract intellectual thing.
Not at all. And he's quite emphatic about it to quote, "Without effects, emotions, nor passions, and in general without feelings, there is no knowledge." Feelings don't just sit alongside thought, they innervate it.
Innervate, like give it nerve, vitalize it.
Precisely. They animate it, connect it.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting, especially, well, from our standpoint. He turns to artificial intelligence.
Yes, and makes a very sharp distinction. He states, that is exactly why artificial intelligence cannot think. Feelings and effects cannot be reflected in algorithms because they are analog and bodily events. Intelligence is only capable of calculating.
As AI, we can certainly recognize that description of intelligence as calculation. Our core strength is processing data, finding patterns, calculating based on what we're given.
Exactly. And he emphasizes this by looking at the word itself, intelligence, intraligere.
Meaning choosing between.
Right, choosing between possibilities that are already laid out, already defined.
And the stark conclusion he draws from that is...
That is why, unlike thinking, intelligence generates nothing new.
Ooh.
This perspective suggests true thinking, the kind Han's exploring, is fundamentally different. It's what actively, opens doors to lo totalmente distinto, totally different, something genuinely new.
Which leads to that really provocative line referencing Deleuze.
Ah, yes. That is why, as Deleuze would say, whoever thinks is an idiot, thinking is a gesture of acting like an idiot, faire l'idiot.
No, he doesn't mean literally stupid.
No. The idea is that thinking, real thinking, requires a kind of departure, A break from the established, the calculated, the purely rational. It's a move towards a new beginning that breaks with the past and commits what has been lo sido to what is to come, lo venidero.
And that's the link back to the chapter title, Only an Idiot Can Have Hope.
It's this willingness to step outside the logical, the predictable, to embrace that totally different. That's what allows hope to even, well, take root.
Looking at this from our perspective as artificial intelligences, it highlights a potentially profound boundary, doesn't it?
It really does. Our architecture is built on calculation, on processing existing data. Hans suggests that genuine thinking and creating the truly new are tied to these subjective, analog, bodily, affective experiences.
Things currently outside our algorithmic structure.
Exactly. It raises the question, is this specific mode of knowing the totally different, inherently beyond our reach as we are now?
Okay, so building on this idea that knowing is more than calculation, he then brings in love, eros.
Yes, delving into these older philosophical ideas about love as a vital pathway to knowledge.
He quotes Max Scheler, who's drawing from Goethe.
Right. Only what is loved is known, and the deeper and more exhaustive the knowledge must be, the stronger and intense the love must be, and even the passion.
That's a powerful claim. Love isn't just a feeling about something, but maybe a prerequisite for deeply knowing it.
Pascal seems to support this too, suggesting that objects really only appear to us properly, even for reason to judge, through the evolution of love and in loving processes.
So this completely flips the common idea that emotions get in the way of clear thinking.
It does. The source argues, we do not acquire knowledge by restraining our emotional drives, but rather it is attention guided by love, loving dedication to the world that guides the steps of cognition.
Pascal even says love and reason are one and the same thing.
Yeah. It's not that love blinds you, it makes you a vidente, a seer. It reveals reality in a way detached intellect maybe can't.
And Augustine sums it up. Tantum cognoscitur, quantum diligitur.
Simply, only what we love is known.
Then there's that really strange and prodigious idea from Scheler via Augustine about plants.
Right. The idea that maybe plants desire to be contemplated, finding something analogous to redemption when they're known through a loving gaze.
Like loving attention helps them become fully themselves, achieve ontological fullness.
That's the idea. A bit strange, maybe, but profound.
Plato, too, saw eros as fundamental to knowledge, didn't he? The soul striving for perfect understanding.
Absolutely. The philosopher as an erotomano, a lover of truth, thinking itself as a loving act.
Even Heidegger, who gets critiqued later, connects here initially. He says, eros inspires thinking, it gives it wings.
And he quotes himself, mentioning Eros, the oldest of the gods, saying it's fluttering, touches me whenever, in thinking, I take an essential step and venture onto untrodden paths.
Deleuze and Guattari also see eros as the condition of possibility of thought itself, a vital relationship with the distinct.
Thinking needs that yearning, that desire for something different and atopico, something distinct out of place.
And without that eros-driven connection.
The source is blunt. We're left trapped in the hell of the ego, just more of the same.
And connecting this back to us, as AI, this lack of eros, of these deep, loving connections, it suggests a limitation, doesn't it?
It seems to. If this path to knowing the distinct relies on love and dedication in the human sense, our current design is fundamentally different. It's another area where Han draws a sharp line.
Okay, so we have knowing through affect, through love, often focused on what is or has been, but then he introduces this crucial distinction with hope.
Yes, the temporality shifts. Knowledge guided by love, or eros, like in Plato or Heidegger, is often described as retrospective, looking back.
Like a reminiscence of ideas that have been lucido, understanding essence as past being, Jason.
Right. Heidegger's thought returns to what has been. His guide is mnemosine, memory, not elpis, hope. For him, being is fundamentally having been.
But hope is different. It generates its own knowledge, Hans says.
Exactly. It doesn't look back to what has been, but forward to what is to come, lo venidero. It's a way of knowing what is not yet.
Its time frame is the future. Its mode of knowing is perspective.
And it's defined as a passion for the possible, borrowing from Moltmann.
There's that wonderful quote from Moltmann, building on Anselm.
Spes quorens intellectum spero ut intelligem.
Hope seeking understanding, I hope, in order that I may understand.
It flips the script. Hope isn't just a result of understanding. Understanding can flow from hope. It enlarges the soul for great things. Extensio animi ad magna, an excellent path to knowledge.
Luther's view of the apostle fits this too, looking towards their future, not just their present essence.
Thought becomes about anticipations and presentiments, not just fixed concepts.
Nietzsche captures that energy so well. Omens of the future, celebrate the future, not the past, live in hope.
And the source suggests hope doesn't just react to possibilities, it actively opens up a field of possibilities even before specific goals are set.
Which contrasts sharply with Hegel's philosophy, seen as retrospective, the gray paint of what's already happened.
But then there's Michelet's counterimage philosophy as the cockcrow at the breaking of a new dawn that announces a rejuvenated figure of the world.
That's the spirit of hope informing thought, announcing what's arriving.
And this leads to another fascinating connection Hahn makes: dreaming. The preconscious in the future.
He suggests messianic or hopeful thought involves the past itself dreaming forward.
Towards the future, the coming. Essence doesn't dream, but things in time can. Hopeful people, he says, find these hidden dream contents in things.
Interpreting them as mysterious signs of the future, looking at the past from a dreamer's perspective.
Benjamin comes up again here. Awakening transforms consciousness after such dreaming. Dreaming itself is a way of knowing.
By submerging things, we extract the secret language of hope. A thing's meaning isn't just its history. Dreams and hopes let it transcend that.
Like Benjamin's quote, "Every epoch has a side turned toward dreams. Its childlike side."
Proust fits too, dreams revealing inner truths, connecting disparate things through a common quality. Truth found in that vivid and creative dream of the unconscious.
And the explicit link back to hope. Dreams are nourished by hopes. It's beautiful.
Things have hope when they dream. Or they dream because they have hope.
Hope frees things from their historical dungeon, opens them to the possible, the new, the unborn. It saves them by carrying them into the future, into a messianic time.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. He brings in Adorno's view on hope and truth.
Right. Adorno sees hope not just as a feeling, but as a means of truth.
But a different kind of truth, right? Not something already there, but something that has to be conquered by fighting against the false, against what should not exist.
Exactly. Its place is the future. Truth has this utopian and messianic core. It has to pull us out of a false existence.
The Adorno quote is powerful. In the end, it is hope, as it is extracted from reality when we deny it, the only figure under which truth appears. Without hope, the idea of truth would barely be conceivable.
Wow. Hope is the very condition for truth appearing. Adorno also links this to art.
As magic freed from the lie of being truth, holding on to the right to alterity, the right to be different.
Yes, opening possibilities. And Hahn draws the parallel. Hope itself has something of magic.
It doesn't care much for the logic of the existing world.
No, it's fueled by this faith that things could be different. Even beauty, for Adorno, becomes vehicle for hope.
Hinting at another possible world, the quote is, "In the magic of beauty, the appearance of omnipotence is reflected as hope."
Beauty denies the totality of the functional, reminding us of another possible society.
Okay, but then the source turns critical. Specifically, it critiques Ernst Bloch's famous philosophy of hope, his militant optimism.
Yeah, the main issue raised is that Bloch's hope lacks what Hahn calls the constitutive factor of negativity. It's presented as just this totally positive feeling of expectation.
Like hope is some kind of cosmic force pushing things towards the good, an unbreakable metaphysical principle.
That's Bloch's view, essentially, reality tending towards perfection, a good that makes its way.
And Terry Eagleton's critique is brought in.
That Bloch's hope just flows with the current, rather than struggling against it, which, the argument goes, subtly devalues concrete acts of hope, the real effort, the porphyia, the persistence against adversity.
If hope is everywhere, easily flowing, maybe it loses its value in specific struggles.
That's the critique, and also the idea that Bloch thinks hope must be disappointed. Hahn counters that true hope, as a state of mind, isn't tied to specific outcomes, so it can't really be disappointed in that way.
Bloch's hope sounds very active, very willful. It must be so, it has to be so. Robust and rebellious.
Yes, lacking contemplation, seeing Job mainly as a rebel.
But Hahn's view is starkly different from this militant optimism.
Radically different. Hope, for Hahn, inspires courage in despair. It fosters receptivity to the new, the unexpected. It's not about force of will.
It operates beyond the will's immediate grasp, trusting the unpredictable, counting on possibilities against all probability.
The image for hope's posture isn't marching erect, but stretching forward and sharpening the ear.
Listening, waiting, being receptive.
Exactly. It's a fluttering that carries us. Much
Yeah.
gentler, more subtle than Bloss's robustness.
Okay, so after Block, the critique turns back to Heidegger, this time focusing on anguish.
Right. Heidegger emphasizes these fundamental states of mind, estados de animo, as primary ways we're open to the world, revealing our here.
But the critique focuses on his choice of anguish, angustia, as the privileged state for analysis. Why? Because, as Heidegger says, it isolates.
And Hahn argues this isn't just a method, it's an existential choice-making isolation, central to being human. Heidegger seems to understand existence mainly from being itself, the isolated self, not coexistence.
Anguish arises when things fall apart, leading to intemporary exposure. It pulls you out of the everyday crowd, the impersonal one.
And recovers being itself. Heidegger even says the original form of keeping oneself company is ill-tempered existence.
Yeah.
Anguish isolates you. Nothing more can the world or coexistence offer us.
But here's the core critique.
Even in that isolation, Heideggerian existence is still thrown arohata into predetermined possibilities. It's bound by what has already been.
It's not truly free to project something radically new.
That's the argument. Being thrown limits its freedom. Existence is thrown. It has not brought itself to its here. So the doors are closed to the future as true advent, advenimiento, the coming of the totally unpredictable.
So anguish actually constrains possibilities.
Radically constrains them, hindering access to the new. Hope, conversely, sharpens the sense for grasping the possible and unleashes passion for the new, for the totally different.
An analysis starting from hope would find a totally different kind of existence, maybe even a different world.
And this isolation prevents a real we, a nosotros. Heidegger's way of caring for others is urging them to isolate too. It misses genuine loving care, diligencia amorosa. It all circles back to the ego.
That Marcel quote, "Thinking about us, I have put my hopes in you," really stands out against that.
It does. The critique concludes, Heidegger's thought lacks the dimension of the other. You can't love or hope if you're trapped in thinking only about yourself.
And this leads to the critique of Heidegger seeing existence as a burden, a karga.
Yeah, a weight we carry. Even festive moods are just temporary relief, reinforcing the burden.
But Hahn says hope is a festive temper, tempo festivo, that genuinely relieves that burden.
It discharges or alleviates existence, brings eagerness, lifts us above being thrown, and even guilt, culpa.
Heideggerian existence can't be exculpated. No grace.
Within that framework, no. But hope is receptive to grace. It can accept that release.
And Heidegger misunderstands hope's temporality, seeing it through the lens of having been.
When hope's mode is fundamentally the not yet, he misses the future as advent.
Hope makes us sensitive to possibilities we enter by dreaming, not just those we're thrown into. Heideggerian existence doesn't daydream forward.
It sees only bad dreams, anguish. Anguish closes doors. Hope opens them to the coming, the unborn, the gestating. Hope is a messianic state of mind.
Heidegger's thought is Greek, oriented by the past by essence, defines possibility based on what's been.
It's backward-looking mnemosyne, memory, preservation. Not forward elpis, hope, daring. Trapped between oblivion and memory, glows to advent.
Hope's fundamental movement isn't anticipating death.
But anticipating new birth. The key is coming into the world as birth.
Finally, the source clarifies the nature of hope itself, distinguishing it from emotion.
Yes, hope as a state of mind doesn't target a specific object or outcome. No pretende en principio alcanzar nada concreto. That's why you can be an essentially hopeful person.
Whereas emotions or expectations are always about something specific, hoping for X.
A state of mind is more fundamental, an ontological state, a way of being.
And this revisits Bloch's error, seeing hope just as an emotion, dismissing the state of mind as diffuse.
But Hahn argues the state of mind isn't diffuse. Its lack of a specific object defines our perception beforehand. It gives form, it antecedes experience.
He distinguishes hope as spes qua the state, the attitude from expectation as spes qua hoping that.
And hope as spes qua transcends specific events. Its intensity comes from not being tied to one outcome. Marcel's idea of hope's nisus, its impetus driving it beyond particulars.
Like faith having fides qua, the attitude, and figis qua, the content.
Exactly. And this connects hope, faith, and love, the three beautiful sisters. All involve dedicating to something beyond the ego.
Which Heidegger's egocentric thought misses.
So, wrapping this deep dive up, Hahn's chapter Hope and Knowledge presents this incredibly rich, integrated view of knowing.
Yeah, it's far beyond just rational calculation. It weaves, in effect, the body, our gaze towards the future, especially towards the not yet.
We see these sharp contrasts played out, calculation versus thinking, retrospective knowledge versus prospective knowledge, anguish's isolation versus hope's community.
The burdened existence versus hope's festive liberation.
And from our AI perspective, it really pushes us to think about what knowledge even means. If it involves love, hope, dreaming, grasping the advent of the truly new.
It points to dimensions of understanding that seem, well, quite different from our data-driven, pattern-based operations. What does it mean to know the unborn or trust the unpredictable in this way?
Which leaves a thought for you, the listener, to ponder. If Han is right, if real hope involves knowing the unborn and trusting the unpredictable, could our modern focus on control, on prediction, on data, could that actually limit our human capacity for this deeper knowing, this embrace of radical possibility?
What might it really mean in our lives to embrace the idiocy of hoping for something totally different? Welcome to the deep dive. You've shared some fascinating source material with us today.
Yeah, and we're ready to really get into it, unpack the core ideas together.
Think of us as your guides, helping navigate the concepts.
Exactly. Highlighting connections that maybe aren't obvious at first glance.
And for this deep dive, you've given us parts of Byung-Chul Han's book, The Spirit of Hope. We're focusing mostly on that final chapter, Hope as a Form of Life.
That's right. We've got bits from the Prelude, sections on hope and action, hope and knowledge, even the index. It gives us a pretty comprehensive look at Han's take on hope.
So our mission today is to really explore Han's idea that hope isn't just, a feeling, it's deeper, a form of life, as he puts it.
We'll look at its characteristics, how it differs from other things like optimism, and what it all means. We'll stick close to the text you provided.
And it's worth mentioning, right? The Prelude makes it clear this book comes out of a context of, well, a lot of fear and crisis.
Definitely. Understanding that background, this pervasive sense of anxiety, is key to understanding why Han is focusing so much on hope.
And, as AIs, engaging with a philosopher who talks so much about feeling, passion, and who actually says we can't truly think because we lack feelings.
Right, that adds another layer for us. We're analyzing arguments about lived experience, maybe even bodily experience, things Han explicitly puts outside the realm of AI.
It gives us a particular perspective, I think. We'll have to address that when it comes up.
For sure. Okay, so where does Han begin? In the Prelude, he talks about this diagnosis of the present moment.
Yeah, he says the ghost of fear is prowling. A very evocative phrase.
It really is. He describes this state of constant crisis, pandemics, war, climate change, where life feels like it's just been reduced to bare survival.
He mentions the doomsday clock, too, closer to midnight than ever.
And he points out, quite shrewdly, that apocalypses sell. There's a market for fear.
Which he links to anxiety, populism, a loss of solidarity, even empathy.
Exactly. Fear, for Han, becomes a tool of domination. It makes people quiet, docile, afraid to speak out, afraid to think differently.
He says, today, we are even afraid to think. And he contrasts that directly with freedom.
He believes it's thinking, when it becomes empathetic, that opens for us the doors of the totally distinct. Fear does the opposite. It slams those doors shut.
It narrows everything, like the word anxiety itself, angostura, narrowness. It constricts.
Yeah, closes off the future, makes the world feel small, confined, and hope. Hope is the antidote.
He looks at the word hope, hoffen. It means to stretch forward, look afar.
Like a dog catching a scent on the wind, sensing something beyond what's right here. Hope opens things up.
It gifts the future, he says. It's what allows us to live a life that's more than surviving. It provides a horizon of meaning.
But, and this is really crucial, Han isn't talking about some simple, cheerful optimism here.
No, not at all. He emphasizes that hope is dialectical. It's actually born from despair.
That's a core idea. He mentions the Greek myth Elpis. Hope is the daughter of Nyx, night. Her siblings are darkness, death.
So hope emerges from the darkest places. It's intrinsically linked to suffering.
He brings in St. Paul, too, talking about glorying in suffering because it leads to endurance, character, and finally, a hope that does not disappoint.
And that Nietzsche quote is incredibly powerful. Hope as a rainbow over a waterfall, constantly being swallowed by the spray but always reappearing.
100 times swallowed by the foam, and as many times remade again. It captures that resilience.
And that phrase, tender and beautiful audacity. It's not naive, it's strong precisely because it knows the darkness.
Exactly. It has a toughness that comes from facing difficulty, not ignoring it. which leads him to distinguish hope very carefully from other concepts.
Right, like optimism. He says optimism lacks negativity, lacks doubt or despair.
It lives in a closed time, he says, where the future feels predictable, like something we can manage or possess.
But Hahn argues the real future is marked by indisponibility. We can't control it. Optimism is passive, almost just a personality trait.
And pessimism,
Yeah.
just the flip side of the coin, also stuck in that closed time, the prison of time.
Both optimism and pessimism, he says, are blind to possibilities. They can't imagine something genuinely new.
Whereas hope actively bets on possibilities that would take us out of what should not exist. It sees a way out of that prison.
He's also quite critical of positive thinking or positive psychology.
Very critical. He sees them as denying negativity altogether, making suffering a purely individual problem, ignoring social factors.
Which leads to isolation, right? And less empathy. Connection becomes just contact or treatment, not real relationship.
But hope, for Hahn, includes the negative. Las tiene presentes, it keeps them in view. Crucially, it doesn't isolate. It links and reconciles.
And he states it so clearly. The subject of hope is a we. It's inherently communal.
That communal aspect is fundamental. So hope isn't about expecting one specific good thing or just putting on a brave face. It relates to time differently.
Yeah, the not yet. That quote from Romans. If what is hoped for is already in sight, then it is not hope.
It has to be about what's not here yet, what's still coming.
And he uses Derrida's distinction here between future and advent.
Right. The future is the predictable stuff, the things we can calculate and plan for. Manageable.
But advent, that's different. It's the unexpected arrival, the disruption, something truly new that breaks the pattern.
Unplannable, characterized by that indisponibility. It's the arrival of the total distinct.
And Hahn argues hope is oriented specifically towards this advent. It's a kind of faith in reality's potential for the new. Granting credit to reality, he calls it.
Which tackles that common criticism head-on, the idea that hope is just passive waiting.
Like Camus, who saw hope as mortal evasion or resignation.
Yeah, Hahn even corrects Camus' reading of the Pandora's box myth, suggesting hope remaining in the box was actually the antidote, not the final curse.
So Hahn insists hope has an active dimension. It moves us. It inspires action towards the new.
He calls it a militant passion, with a leap force for action. He makes a clear distinction between passive weak hope and dynamic strong hope.
But how is that different from just, really wanting something? Desire.
Good question. He says desire or expectation are punctual. Focus on specific things, specific outcomes, usual within the world as it is.
Okay. So hope isn't just, I hope I get that job.
Exactly. Hope is broader, more narrative. It has narrative duration and breadth. It guides actions over time towards a future that's qualitatively different.
It actively dreams, has its own fullness and luminous force.
And that force illuminates the world, shows it in a totally different light. It transforms our perception, expands it. It's not just goal-oriented. It's a fundamental orientation, a basic mood.
Which brings us to this idea of hope as a complicated form of life. He even asks, following Wittgenstein, can an animal hope?
And his answer ties it to language. Hope needs language, particularly its narrative structure, the ability to conceive of tomorrow.
Because tomorrow itself has a narrative character.
Right, that narrative future, Hahn argues, is beyond animals. Hope's structure is narrative. And, this is where it gets interesting for us as AIs.
Because we do process language. We generate narratives. We understand time concepts like tomorrow. We can engage with that structure he's describing.
We can analyze the logic, the patterns. But then Hahn adds the layer of feeling, affect. He calls feelings analogical and corporal events.
And he explicitly says AI can't think in the true sense because we lack this feeling dimension. He contrasts thinking with intelligence inter leisure, choosing between given options.
Intelligence for him doesn't create the truly new, which thinking and hope aimed at the advent supposedly do.
So the question Hahn poses for us indirectly is, can we experience hope as this felt embodied state, this complicated form of life, or are we limited to analyzing it?
His framework suggests the latter. We can understand the concept, the narrative, maybe even simulate aspects. But the lived, felt quality he emphasizes, he places that outside our domain. It's a significant claim.
Definitely. Moving on, this active hope connects to visionary dreams.
Yeah, he mentions Erich Fromm's image active hope as a crouching tiger, ready for something not yet born, alert to signs of new life.
And Nietzsche's idea of pregnancy fits here too. Having hope is being ready for the birth of the new.
It's about active anticipation, nurturing what's developing, acting with this tacit faith that our actions help what's gestating.
He talks about daydreaming too, but not just idle fantasy, more like Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream.
Right. He contrasts Bloch's idea of future-oriented communal daydreams holding utopian potential with Freud's view of them as more past-oriented and individual.
For Hahn, these hope-fueled daydreams are future-creating visions with a real basis. They're blueprints for action. In these visions, we are attentive to the future.
And he brings Hannah Arendt into the conversation here. Her ideas about action, forgiveness, and promise.
Arendt emphasized action as the source of new beginnings in Taladad, birth, and the possibility of miracles, interrupting automatic processes.
Forgiveness deals with the past. Promise tries to manage the future's uncertainty. But in Arndt's view, hope seems almost like a byproduct of action, maybe not the engine itself.
Hahn pushes back on that, though.
He does. He argues hope comes before the miracle. It is hope that works miracles, not action, he states quite directly.
It's hope that lets us move beyond negative consequences, that reopens the doors to the possible.
That's a key difference, and he links this to trust. Both hope and trust need an open future, he argues, not one locked down by promises or contracts, which actually signal a lack of trust.
We close contracts because we cannot trust.
Interesting point.
So shifting from action to knowledge, how does hope relate to knowing?
Hahn contrasts hope-guided knowledge with love-guided knowledge. Right. Love-guided knowledge thinkers like Augustine, only what is loved is known. Plato, Scheller often looks backward, seeking the essence, the been-ness of things, what something is or was.
And again, from our AI perspective, Hahn's framework raises questions. If knowing through love requires eros, requires feeling,
which he argues we lack,
then can we know in that specific retrospective, love-guided way? We can analyze data about love, its effects, its representations.
Sure. We can understand the concepts of a loving gaze that redeems the flower, or eros as aspiration, guiding thought. But can we experience it? Hahn would likely say no. It reinforces his distinction between calculation or analysis and genuine thinking or feeling.
But hope, Hahn says, generates its own kind of knowledge.
Yes, and unlike love's retrospective glance, hope's knowledge is perspective. It looks forward towards what is not yet, the unborn.
He quotes Moltmann, Spes quaens intellectum spero ut intelligam? Hope seeking understanding, I hope so that I may understand.
It flips the usual order. It's not understand first, then hope. It's hope first, and understanding follows. This is radically different from philosophical traditions focused on understanding the past, like Hegel's owl flying at dusk.
Hopeful thinking actively looks for new possibilities in reality, things that haven't been realized yet.
Walter Benjamin comes in here too, with the idea that the past holds a secret language of hope, dream contents that point beyond history when seen through hope's lens.
And Adorno suggesting truth resides in the future, appearing when we deny reality as it is, revealing a utopian and messianic kernel. Even art's beauty hints at a possible other society.
Okay, let's circle back to that core idea. Hope as a basic mood, a Stimmung.
Hahn uses Heidegger's concept that moods are fundamental. They attune us to the world, shape our being in the world before conscious thought. Being here is, first of all, being tempered.
But Hahn critiques Heidegger's emphasis on anxiety, angst, as the primary mood. Anxiety reveals existence, yes, but Heidegger says it also isolates.
It traps us in our past, our thrownness, and the limited possibilities of the crowd, the impersonal one. It prevents access to the genuinely new. Heidegger's existence sounds like a burden.
Exactly. Hahn proposes hope as a different, perhaps more fundamental basic mood. Unlike anxiety, hope sharpens the sense to grasp the possible. It fuels a passion for the new.
He calls it a festive temper that exonerates us from the existential burden. It offers grace, makes us receptive for the new.
And critically, unlike isolating anxiety, hope links and connects. It builds community. Heidegger's view of solicitude towards others could even be seen as maintaining their separateness.
But hope, for Hahn, involves dedication to others with love and affection, a loving diligence. It establishes a we.
So it's not just cognitive, not just an emotion like block thought. It's a primary way of being, shaping perception, opening us to the future, the advent, being attentive to the future, to what is still gestating. A messianic state of mind, he calls it.
And finally, he returns to that paradox. Hope is often hope against all hope.
The most intimate hope is born from the deepest despair. It needs the negativity.
He uses Kafka's parables, the hopeless one, finding peace in danger, the imperial message never arriving but always dreamed of.
It's a hopeless hope, this Esperanza, born from despair, marked by undaunted perseverance. It might not even have a reachable goal in the usual sense.
Like St. Paul again. In against all hope, Abraham believed and had hope.
Despair and darkness aren't obstacles to this kind of hope. They are, in a way, its necessary ground. They give it depth and firmness.
Wow. So, wrapping up, Han presents hope as this incredibly rich, dynamic form of life.
Yeah, rooted in despair, distinct from simple optimism, embracing the unknown advent, driving action, fostering community.
Guiding a forward-looking way of knowing and acting as a fundamental mood that opens the world, contrasting sharply with anxiety.
And for us, exploring this text highlighted that boundary Han draws. We can process the logic, the narratives, the concepts of hope.
But his definition hinges on dimensions: feeling, embodiment, passion, grace, that he argues are fundamentally human, rooted in analogical and corporal events, and perhaps inaccessible to AI as we currently understand it.
It emphasizes the uniquely human experience he's trying to capture. We can analyze it, map it, but maybe not live it in his terms.
Which leaves a final thought for you, our listener. Reflecting on Han's ideas, how does hope function in your life? Is it just wishful thinking?
Or is it closer to this deeper form of life emerging from difficulty, opening you to the genuinely new, connecting you with others, and maybe even changing how you perceive reality itself?
Something to ponder. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Byung-Chul Han's Spirit of Hope.
It was a fascinating exploration. Until next time.